The Torah describing the Yidden camping opposite Har Sinai says, Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged Ahar, the Yidden camped opposite the mountain. The Mechilta says, in all other places it says, by all other journeys, Vayisu, they traveled, Vayachanu, they camped, because they were traveling and camping in Machloikas. But here they were all united, all equal with one heart. Now from the Mechilta it sounds like the Chiddush, the novelty, is the fact that here they had one heart. But the fact that all other times with Machloikas, that seems to be the given. All other times it says Vayisu, Vayachanu in the plural. But Rashi actually changes the order and says, on the words Vayichan Sham Yisrael, he says, Ki'ish echad b'leiv echad, they were like one man with one heart, but all other campings were with complaints of Machloikas, which sounds like the Chiddush, the novelty is that all other times was with Machloikas. We need to understand the reason for this difference. Now, simply the difference is connected with where each one of them learned this from. The Mechilta is learning that it was always with Machloikas from the fact that it usually says Vayisu, Vayachanu, they traveled, they camped in the plural. Here it says Vayichan in the singular. Rashi, on the other hand, doesn't say anything about the other journeys being Vayisu, Vayachanu. Because simply the reason it says in the plural the other times is because we're speaking about many people traveling and camping. Rashi is learning it from the fact that it says Vayichan Sham Yisrael. By Matan Torah, by Har Sinai, it says there they camped. And it says it in the singular, it says an extra word. Why are we emphasizing there they camped? Which means like one man, because Vayichan Lashon Yachid. It's coming to tell us only here they were like one man as opposed to all other places. But we need to understand what's the logic for the Mechilta to say that Vayisu, when it says in plural, is an inyan of Machloikas. Why can't it simply mean because they are many? Another question. On the pasuk Vayisu b'nei Yisrael, the Yidden traveled from Ramses to Sukkos, which again says in the plural. But the Mechilta says that journey was done keherifying like in the blink of an eye. Surely at that time there wouldn't have been a Machloikas when in the blink of an eye all the Yidden surely would have been together. Why over there does it say Vayisu in the plural? And finally, according to Rashi, we need to understand why would it be that it's specifically from this pasuk that we learned that all other times was with Machloikas. According to the Mechilta, again, the other psukim say Vayisu Vayachanu, that it's in the plural. But according to Rashi, we said that's no proof. Rashi is learning it from the fact that by Matan Torah it says that there they were Vayichan in the singular. That means from this pasuk we're learning about all other places. Why would we want to emphasize over here that all other times was with Machloikas? Says the Rebbe, the explanation of all of this is Rashi, which explains things simply. When Rashi says that there was Machloikas and tarumas and complaints, Rashi means very, very simply and literally, which means actual fights, actual Machloikas. For that, there's definitely no proof from the word Vayisu, Vayachanu in the plural, because, as we said, it could just mean that they were many people and therefore they traveled, and it says plural. Rather, Rashi is learning it from the fact that it says over here, Vayichan Sham Yisrael. Here we're giving a special emphasis that it was with Achdus, with unity, that teaches us that all other places, they weren't united. There was fights going on. So again, according to Rashi, when we use the term Machloikas, we actually mean Machloikas, fighting, quarreling. When the Mechilta says that there was Tarumas and Machloikas, Mechilta doesn't mean actual quarreling or actually fighting. Mechilta means differences of opinion. When you have many people are on different levels, people don't think alike, there are going to be differences of opinion. We don't mean an actual fight. And therefore, when many people have to do something, there's going to be different ways of doing it, different opinions of how to do it. And therefore, when it says Vayisu, Vayachanu in the other places, of course it doesn't automatically mean that there's fights. But what it does automatically mean is if you have many, many people, there are going to be many opinions. And that's why, according to the Mechilta, which is learning from Vayisu, Vayachanu, we're only speaking about many opinions, not fights. It's only here when it comes to Matan Torah and it says Vayichan in the singular. So here we have a chidush that they're all united with one heart, because here they're about to receive the Torah. Torah achieves that there should be true unity amongst the Yidden, and there aren't even differences of opinion. And this is why, even when the Yidden previously traveled from Ramses to Sukkos in that instant, in the blink of an eye, it still says Vayisu in the plural, because it's still before the time that they're at the giving of the Torah, which Torah is the one that brings about the Achdus. And that's going to be the explanation also why the Torah emphasizes in this pasuk, Vayichan Sham Yisro. We want to know, why does the Torah have to emphasize it over here that all other places were with machloikas? Because what we're trying to say is that this is the Chiddush of Matan Torah, that only Torah could bring a true Achdus. Now, according to Rashi that explained that machloikas doesn't only mean differences of opinion, but real machloikas, so that would actually mean that Torah brings about an achdus, not only where there are differences of opinion, but even when there's real machloikas, real arguments and fights, even over there, Torah achieves this achdus. In order to explain all of this, what does it mean that Torah brings achdus? Because seemingly, we know there are many, many differences of opinions in Torah. How do we say that in Torah, everyone's united kalev b'leiv echad? In order to understand this, says the Rebbe, we'll first look a little bit more on this idea of Vayichan Sham Yisrael. The pasuk says that b'chodesh hashlishi, in the third month, the Yidden came to Har Sinai, and that's where they camped as one man with one heart. In other words, this is specifically connected to the number 3, the third month. Now, seemingly, the idea of unity would have seemingly be more fitting with the first month, number 1. That's Achdus. So the Rebbe explains this based on a famous concept that the differences between the numbers 1, 2, and 3, what each one represents. Number 1 represents where there's one entity, where there's no room for anything else at all. Like it says about Hashem on the first day of creation, it says Yoim Echad, because there's only Hashem, there's nothing else. Number 2 represents, now we have 2 things. Here there's already separation. Number 3 represents that we're bringing the 2 together. Like it says, you can have a situation where there's 2 psukim that seem to be a contradiction to each other, and the third comes and reconciles and brings the 2 together. Now, it doesn't mean that the third one is just agreeing with one of the 2 opinions and knocking down the other opinion, but rather the third one is causing that there should be a unity between the other 2 opinions as well. In fact, says the Rebbe, even in a place where Torah is going to paskin, that we're clearly going according to one opinion and not according to the other, but deep down inside, but Pnimius, it's going to be in a way of shalom, that it's really reconciling between the 2 and bringing the 2 together, as we will soon explain. Because once the halacha is paskind, now even the opposing opinions are going to agree not only to the way we have to act, but even in their seichel, in their whole intellect, in their whole mitzias, they're going to agree with the halacha. We'll soon see why that is. With this, the Rebbe explains an interesting story, where on one occasion Rabbi Yeshua's calculation for Yom Kippur came out different to what Rabbi Gamliel passed. And Rabbi Gamliel said, I want you to come walk to Yavne on the day that you think is Yom Kippur with your walking stick and with your money. And the Rebbe explains, why did he have to come with the walking stick and with his money? Why not just walking itself? Would have also been good enough to show that he agrees that the day is Yom Kippur, because it would have been walking out of the amount that you're allowed to walk on Shabbos. And the Rebbe explains, because walking himself means just that his own, intellectually he agreed, or a certain aspect of him agreed to Rabbi Gamliel. Walking with his money and with his walking stick, and even with his money, which is something even more external. Walking stick is supporting him. Money is even further from him, represents the idea that every aspect of it is agreeing and coming on board with the halacha. How do we understand all of this? Says the Rebbe, we know that Torah, although on the one hand we call Torah Chachma, wisdom, the Torah says it's your wisdom in the eyes of the nations, but Torah is also the idea of Hayirah. It's much more than just Chachma. And the Rebbe explains, because Torah doesn't only come along and explain to us the emes of every single thing, the truth of everything, but also gives us what's the bottom line result, how we need to act, how does the person need to behave. When it comes to other sciences and other wisdom, they might teach us that if you act in a particular way, this is going to be the result. For example, in medical science, it might say if you act in a particular way, this is going to be the result. But if you don't want to act that way, you want to harm yourself, good for you. But Torah comes along and says, no, you have to act in the particular way our Torah says, and you're not allowed to harm yourself. Says the Rebbe, so therefore, Torah, even the Chachma aspect of Torah, is going to be in a totally different level. Because when you know that when you're learning something and it's going to be relevant in Maisa B'Poil, then it's going to make you think much deeper and come to a much more emesdik conclusion. What's the reason why it is that Torah achieves this? Says the Rebbe, because Torah is the Chachma and the Ratzon of Hashem, which is the absolute emes. And what's emes mean? Truth means that it's real and true on every single level. It can only be true on the level of intellect, but then when it comes to Maisa B'Poil, to action, you're somewhere else. Truth means that it penetrates down to every single level into Maisa B'Poil. How do you reach that? How do we get to this? Says the Rebbe, this only happens when you have the bittul when you're learning Torah. In other words, we need to mix our own agendas out of all of this. We can't have our own biases. In fact, the Rebbe explains with this also why we say that the halacha is like Beis Hillel as opposed to Beis Shammai, because they had a certain element of bittul. Because when you're just going purely based on intellect, intellect also has its own biases, and sometimes it's going to be leaning chesed or gvura or the like. It's only with bittul that you're a keli, a receptacle for the true absolute emes. Says the Rebbe, this is also what we find in Mishnayos. Shas starts off with me, Amosai Koyer Nishma. We start off speaking with the halachas of Kriya Shema. And it finishes off with Kol HaShoyna halachas b'chol yom, about people learning halacha. The reason we finish off with halacha is because that's the whole purpose of learning, is to bring down to the ma'aseh b'poil, to the halacha. And that again emphasizes the idea of the absolute emes of Torah, that it reaches down to the ma'aseh b'poil. But in order to come to that, you need to start with the halachas of Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema is about Kabbalah soil. When we have the bittul, when we're nullified to Hashem's desire, then the way we learn is also going to be with bittul. Because when you're learning, you know that the way you're going to paskin, this is going to be relevant if someone's going to act according to your psak based on what Hashem wants, or chas v'shalom the opposite. You're then standing in awe, in fear, to make sure your halacha is going to be in accordance to what Hashem wants. And that's the way you become a receptacle for the truth of Torah. And in other words, when you have this Kabbalah soil, that's the way you're going to come to the real emes of Torah. Says the Rebbe, now we can also understand why we say that Torah is the one that really brings about the real shalom between those that learn. Because in other intellects and other sciences and wisdoms, even if you understand it fine, in ma'aseh b'poil in action, we're going to have to decide one way how everyone's acting, but that's only in action. And we might decide, fine, we're going to follow the majority. But the people's opinions may have not changed, and therefore it's not the ultimate shalom. But Torah, which we said is Melashon Ha'irah, it's all about bringing down the emes of Hashem and how it penetrates down to every level. And we said that the way you go about it is with bittul. So therefore, when a person hears that the halacha was not like him, and he has that bittul, then he's going to try to think deeper and deeper, more and more, until finally he can understand, even with the seichel, of why the halacha should truly be the way somebody else had first suggested. Says the Rebbe, now let's go back to the 3 months of Nisan, which is called the first month, Iyar and Sivan. Nisan, the first month, Hashem took us out. Nigla Aleim, Hashem revealed himself and took us out of Mitzrayim. This is what's called Milmaila Lamata. There's no room for any division. This is actually expressed in the fact that Hashem took us out, as we said before, in one instant Hashem took us out, called on like by the wings on the wings of an eagle. In one nekuda of time, which is beyond division at all. Yidden are called at that time Tzivis Hashem. What's an army all about? Kabbalah soil. In Kabbalah soil, there's no difference between one person and the other. As opposed to logic, we all have our own opinions. So that's what Chodesh Nisan is all about. So yes, there's an achdus, but it's from above. It didn't penetrate to every part of the person on his own. Iyar, on the other hand, number 2, is the idea of Sfiras Omer. Here there's clearly division. Each person is serving Hashem, trying to refine his midas according to his own level. But finally comes Chodesh Sivan, the month of Matan Torah, the 3rd month. This is what brings the real Achdus and Shalom, the peace and harmony, even in a place where there are differences of opinion, and yet we say all the Yidden were united, with one heart. And the Rebbe concludes with a Hayrah. In Tanya, the Alter Rebbe explains about the tremendous level of Avos Yisrael we need to have to each other because of our Shoresh HaNeshama, that in the root of our Neshama, we're all rooted in Hashem Echad. But a person might argue and say that's all very nice if someone else's neshama or shayrish on neshama is shining. But what about his neshama is very, very black the other person's? The materialism of his body is completely covering it over. How can I have love to him? Here comes the Hayrah of Vayichan Sham Yisrael. The Chiddush of Matan Torah was that we have the koyach to bring down the Achdus even into a place where seemingly there was division and differences of opinion and even fights before. We bring down this place of this idea of Achdus. And this is something even greater than just saying that the Achdus is coming because of we're all rooted in Hashem Echad, in a place where there's no room for Machloikas. We bring it into a place where there is room for division. Even there we bring in the unity. Says the Rebbe, this is the Hayrah. We need to be mishtadl. We need to put in the effort to bring in the Achdus into every single Yid, even to those that seem to be on a very low level. And through the Achdus of all of Klal Yisrael, the Rebbe also mentions the idea of a special campaign that the Rebbe made of everyone having a letter in the general Sifrei Torah where all Yidden are united in one Sefer Torah. Through this, we're all Zoycha to the Geula, the Mashiach Tzidkein, the Meher V'Yameinu Mamash.